Hello and welcome to the fifth day of the Atlas Mountain Race over in Morocco. It's been a fairly busy morning. We've got 7 riders who have now finished and the podium is now complete. So let's have a little look at the map and see what's been going on over the last few hours. So Justinus came in after Robin late yesterday, followed by Seb Brouwer. Still haven't got the names right. And they've kind of Seb's been riding like a nice consistent race throughout, and he's kind of just he just kept it together. I did hear that he was a little bit sick on the first night, but you've just got to look after yourself in these things, and I think that consistency has showed. And then our 4th, 5th and 6th riders, Kevin did have a bit of a gap, but it looks like they all came together overnight. I'm not exactly sure 100% what happened, but they all appear to have sort of finished together. And just literally as we're speaking, Sebastian Sachs has just finished in 7th place. So that's the top 7. All in. So there was a little bit of drama. So Jon was ahead of both Kevin and Stephen, but apparently he set his alarm for after like a 2.5-3 hour sleep, and then kept sleeping through it. So he ended up sleeping 7 hours, but then he caught up again. So I think it just goes to show that, you know, we've talked about it a few times about rest versus not sleeping, and that just again proves that rest is is pretty important. I'll have a little look at some of the social media around those guys as well. So this again is the Atlas Mountain Race Instagram feed. So some cool photos. Justinus, he always looks happy, dodging a donkey there. So he finished just over 4 days. So 4 days and 55 minutes, basically, just under the hour there. Again, another really strong ride for Justinus. I'm sure he'll still have some unfinished business with this race, having led the last 2 editions now. He's strong enough to win it. I do suspect maybe if he rested a little bit more earlier on, he might have done better. Maybe a mountain bike would help, but he's essentially on a mountain bike there anyway. So yeah, we'll just have to speculate about that one. And then this is Seb. So yeah, let's. I've lost you. So he was about 6.5 hours behind Justinus. So not a massive gap in the end, really, in the grand scheme of things. So this was the longest ride he's done so far, and he struggled with stomach problems early on, but kept moving. So that was a really great ride, and he's a classy rider. He won the Badlands, which is, well, I'm not quite sure if it's classed as a short ultra or a really long gravel race nowadays, but that was a world-class field. So he's obviously a super strong guy, so he's definitely a name to be looking out for in future editions. What else do we have? And there was some nice coverage from the women as well. So Louisa is still leading at the moment, sort of in just at the front, I guess the front of the mid pack, or maybe at the back of the front. Haven't figured it out yet. So there's Louisa. She still looks pretty happy and pretty chipper, and I think she's pretty much got it in the bag now, barring disaster. And there's some more images of the rest of the front of the race. So yeah, look at these spectacular images. So that was Molly, who at the time was in 2nd place. We'll come on to her again in a minute. And then she was leading, I think it was Alison. Alison Felly Jacquemont in 3rd. And then, of course, the crowd favourite, Gail Brown, showing off her snacks here. As you know, she does tend to pack quite heavily, but I can pretty much guarantee most of that is food, and she basically just excels in these kind of hard conditions. You don't win the Highland Trail race in Scotland on a particularly wet year without being able to look after yourself in the extremes. So there's Gail. She's still trucking along. So she, at the time of this photo, would have been 4th, and I assume that is Alison there. Is she cap 86? No. So yeah, sorry, I haven't got a photo of her yet. But I guess the main story on the women's side of the event is Molly. So in those previous photos, she was second. So she had a bit of an update 10 hours ago. So yeah, that would have been this morning. Basically, I think there's a lot of people suffering now with coughs and colds. I assume it's really dry. It just dries everything out, and that obviously opens you up to infection. There's a lot of dust around, and then getting hot and cold and hot and cold is going to play havoc with your breathing. So yeah, Molly was feeling a little bit under the weather, as you can see from her stories. I think she's loving the experience, but she tried going to the pharmacy. However, she has scratched. So yeah, she's got a pretty emotional. You hear it? Sounds rough.
Evening, everyone. Well, it's evening here when I'm recording this. I am not very well, and we're not talking the food poisoning from night one. I have something wrong with my lungs, respiratory system, something. You can hear it in my breathing.
I mean, I'm not a doctor, but that's not very healthy, is it?
Right.
No. So yeah, not great. So she said she improved overnight, but she then scratched. So that is Molly scratching out second place in the women's race, which is it's really unfortunate. But sometimes health comes first. I mean, I've done it myself with similar kind of conditions and a similar kind of symptoms. So yeah, so that's the women's race. Let's just see where they are on the map before we go on to the rest of the content. So Louise, she's been knocking around that kind of just on the edge of the top 20. So where is she now, Louise? Yeah. So she is just into that last section. Looks like there's a few climbs in there, and then that long drag along the coast. So I'd imagine she'll probably finish at some point tonight. But still, it's an awesome ride from her. And now she's gotten in surmountable lead over. It was Alison, I think, who was in third, who will now be in second. Where is she? There's Gail. Alison. All right, Alison. There we go. See where she is. Yeah. So there's a big old big old gap there. So I think Louise has pretty much got this in the bag. Alison looking like second, and Gail looking like she's probably going to come in third, although still a fairly long way back. So you just don't know what's going to happen out there. Other news: Jeff Kilgove. First flat on the mountain bike in 5 seasons. I mean, that tells you either A, about the skill of him as a mountain biker, or B, how brutal the tracks are out in Morocco. So yeah, something you don't need in the tail end of a race. And of course, Nelson made the course, and there's loads of sand just to really annoy you right at the end. And that's a common theme in Nelson's courses. You don't get it easy. So yeah, those riders will be loving that. And this is the kind of climbs. Look at that for a climb, all the way wiggling up there. Actually, I know where that is. I think I did that in the dark last year. I didn't really know what was going on. So yeah, that's why it felt like it was such a long climb. Other news, I mean, back in the mid-pack, I think people are really suffering. If you think the leaders have really been suffering over 4 days, these guys are still at CP2 and just past that area, and they're looking at probably another 3 or 4 days out there. And that's, I always say this, it's almost harder to do it slower. Winning is the easy route because you're out there for less time. There's less exposure to the elements. You get proper sleep sooner. So the real heroes are always the guys in the mid-pack. This is Hippie. He's a bit of a legend in the ultra scene. I think he had a crash a couple of days back, so he's been battling. He suspects a broken rib. Can't sleep well. Wake up choking. Better when elevated. Obviously, that's not ideal, is it? When you're trying to do a bike race. what happened here. So yeah, bike issues. Had to walk most of the Old Colonial Road. Again, that sounds just like a broken rib, doesn't it? It's a rough old track, and you try and control your bike with your arms out in front of you. You know, it's taken a lot of core. So yeah, his suffering, and then eventually hit a sore bum by the looks of it. But it looks like he scratched eventually, unfortunately. Yeah, called it scratching. Just hard to do anything with a broken rib, so you kind of feel for him. It's one of those things, but I'm sure he'll be back. And I think that's a pattern. I mean, if we go further down, there's kind of, I think, the guys now who are, you know, definitely going to finish without, you know, barring major disaster. You can probably, you know, draw a line down here and say these guys are probably going to finish, and these guys across here, you know, in that second part are really, really going to have it tough. There's still some big sections to go, and I think that's probably reflected in the scratch list. If we head down to the bottom, I mean, it's just grown exponentially over the last few days. I mean, it started a pattern like Mattea scratching, and then suddenly they're just dropping like flies. Adam Palin's gone. That's a surprise. Obviously, Molly's gone. We know about him, about her. Sorry. Daniela Kirshner, she's scratched. I'm surprised about that. Normally she's super resilient. Maybe I imagine there's a lot of this cough type thing going around. So yeah, the list is getting longer and longer on the scratches, unfortunately. But I guess that's racing. That is what happens, and you know, sometimes you've just got to try and finish these events. You can't win without finishing, and the truth is, for you know, the vast majority of the field, it is all about winning, all about finishing, not winning. So yeah, it's a brute, the Atlas Mountain Race. So yeah, that's all I've got today. Hopefully we'll have a women's winner tomorrow, so I'll do another update and round up the women's race. And yeah, if you like the reports I've been doing, please consider subscribing to the channel. The plan is to do some more races. General feedback's been pretty good so far, so it's something I want to try and continue. So yeah, if you subscribe and hit notifications, then that means you'll get pop-ups every time I post a new video. So yeah, thanks very much, and see you again tomorrow.